And once we realize how we're processing stimuli, it becomes a lot more empowering. So a lot of what I hear is people don't feel empowered. They feel like there's a power dynamic. I recently had a client say to me, well, shouldn't men chase women? Isn't that the way that it works? And I said, well, why are you running away?
Hey there, everyone. This is Clay, and this video is not going to be the typical kind of video that you may have grown accustomed to seeing on this channel. I know that probably many of you know this, but this whole modern love thing is not just me by myself. We actually have an entire team of people, and I wanted to introduce you to one of our team members here, whose name is Chantel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Chantel. I am the Director of Enrollment. I've worked for Clay for a year and a half now, and I have absolutely thoroughly enjoyed my time here. So thank you so much for Clay for having me here. And yeah, let's have a chat.
Some of you may have spoken to Chantel either while joining one of our programs, or maybe just you spoke to her and it wasn't the right thing for you. But you may have interacted with her before. If not, then this is your chance to get to know her. Really, I guess the best way to open this up is to just say, this is probably what a lot of people would consider an unusual sort of career to have. It's like, hey, when you talk to kids, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a firefighter, I want to, be a ballerina or something. It's like this is not the usual sort of thing. Even for, older kids, it's like, yeah, I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever. What drew you towards this sort of work?
Well, I've always been in the service industry. So I come from a chef background. I've been a chef for 25 years. I've owned my own catering business since 2002. I worked on cruise ships for 5 years. I've been all over the world, seen 71 countries, and met a ton of people. And every time I have a job, I've noticed that, the HR world has kind of pulled out to me. I've always been either an advocate or an ambassador for whatever position I'm in, mediating between like upper officers and regular crew, or working with my coworkers to establish different lobbies and communities within the workplace. So I've always gravitated towards being able to mediate and help with people. So when I got the opportunity and received an email saying, hey, Clay, I'm looking for this, would you like to try? I hopped on it going, wow, this is going to be right up my alley, because I love those things. I love working with people. I've worked with people for 25 years, and it brightens my day, gives me a smile every day knowing that I'm putting something beneficial out into the universe.
That's great to hear. And when I did get your application to join our team here, it really did stand out, head and shoulders above the other one. So and then when we had that first call, it's like, okay, like I can't think of a reason not to hire you. So unless you have any questions, welcome aboard.
Yeah, it was so amazing, because I remember going, okay, so this is probably a shot in the dark. I'm just going to fill this. And it was funny because it wasn't your typical application either. So I was just like, oh, this is really different. You're kind of asking things on a more emotional level. And based on the type of company that you have, it kind of makes sense, right? So I didn't have to fill out, where did I work? How long have I been here? There was not a lot of like metadata that I needed to fill out. It was more like, how do you feel about this scenario? How would you handle this scenario? How can you explain this? And so it was really great to have an application that I could like pour my heart into and go, oh, I can feel the emotional connection here is what you're looking for, which is basically what we teach anyway. So it was an awesome experience going through the application process. That Zoom interview was amazing. It was kind of surreal. I was like, I just got hired on the spot. That's amazing. But I've always felt right at home right from day one. So it's been a great fit.
With that being said, I mean, you have spoken with a lot of people over the past year and a half or so that you've been with us, and I don't know about you, but when I talk to a high volume of people, I start to see certain trends and patterns and sorts of things. Have you noticed that as well too?
Yeah, I notice a lot of people come to us with the desire to fix a problem. And the great thing about what we do is enabling them to fix the problem for themselves. We're kind of head and shoulders above some of our colleagues in the industry, I would say, because we're not here to like lay out a roadmap of, okay, go down this path, do that thing, face this situation in this way, and you'll get perfect results. And we don't play on the emotions of outcome-based philosophy. What we do is be able to empower people to really see that path for themselves and really dictate on the map where they want to go. So a lot of the times that I speak to people, it's getting them to self-realize that they have the power to choose their own path in life.
Yeah, totally, totally. And I do think that that is probably, hopefully, one way that we stand out from other coaches or relationship experts online and such, is that at least within the whole breakup space, there's a sort of overwhelming sense of recommendation that, like, okay, you just have to not think about this, just blindly trust everything that we say, just do no contact for 1 month, then write a handwritten letter, and then meet up for coffee, and then bada bing bada boom, you're back together. I don't know, I suppose that would work for some people, but I think that just sort of blindly following, in many ways, overly simplified process like that isn't necessarily going to help a lot of people out. And that we need to acknowledge and recognize that your partner is a human being, right? They have their own emotions, they have their own past, they have their own history, they have all that sort of stuff, just the same way that you and I do. Well, it may make sense for certain people to do a month of no contact. It could be the exact opposite for someone else. If someone really needs to see that you're there for them or something, maybe no contact is maybe the worst choice that you could make. And so at least that's something that I've tried to bake into the cake since the beginning, is, hey, we need to be able to feel into a situation and know what the right thing is. And I mean, maybe it's not the greatest business model in the world, but I want all of our clients to be able to eventually be able to steer their own relationship where they want to go, without always having to turn towards me or you or someone else and say, like, hey, what do I do next? When it comes to the things that you've noticed in your conversations with people, have there been like some other big patterns that have shown up? Like for me, the whole idea of, like, being on the same team, for the person out there watching this, you may have heard me mention same team conversations many times over the past few years. And that's kind of where that came from. It's just like, okay, I'm hearing hundreds of people telling me, yeah, we were fighting and blah blah blah, and I'm just thinking, like, well, these people aren't on the same team. Let's figure out how to fix this. Other patterns that you've noticed over the past, I don't know, several hundred calls I imagine you've had at this point.
Yeah, so one of the big patterns I notice is I need to do this because I need to have this reaction. I need to have this result. So there's a lot of really like scarcity fears and outcome fears. That is a huge pattern. And so I calm a lot of clients by going, okay, well, what are the three things in life you absolutely can always control? You control how you think, you control how you feel, you can control how you act. So basically, what I tell them is, okay, so you control how you think by how you process data. How you process stimuli translates into your thoughts. Then your thoughts translate into feelings, and then your feelings translate into behavior. Because you don't do anything without a thought or a feeling first. You don't go and get that bowl of cereal unless you feel hungry. And you don't get the bowl of cereal that's mini wheats unless you thought to yourself, okay, this is a healthy option, but I get a little sweetness, so I'm going to have mini wheats today. So everything comes into process with each other. And once we realize how we're processing stimuli, it becomes a lot more empowering. So a lot of what I hear is people don't feel empowered. They feel like there's a power dynamic. I recently had a client say to me, well, shouldn't men chase women? Isn't that the way that it works? And I said, well, why are you running away? And she went, and just like an epiphany hit her. I said, listen, a lot of people like to play the cat and mouse game because it's exciting, but it's not sustainable. So if you want to be chased, you have to constantly be running away, because once they catch you, then what? So it's the thought process. How are we processing stimuli? How are we bringing that thought into ourselves to create a sustainable situation? So like you said about the carbon copy, you do no contact, then you write the letter, then you do this, do that. Well, everybody's different. Everybody's unique. The pattern I've seen with everybody is every relationship is their own relationship. And what works for me may not work for you, may not work for Sally, may not work for Bill, may not work for Muhammad. And if I have a partner who's a man and another person is in a same-sex relationship, the dynamic that fits between me may not fit between them. The greatness of what you said about having people think for themselves is one of those things that's very empowering. So we control how we think, we control how we feel, we control how we act based on how we process stimuli.
What I'm really hearing here is that a lot of people are very focused on the externals of their situation, what my partner's saying, what they're doing, what that last text message they said was, what the last fight we had was, what the, last thing they posted on social media was. And instead, what I'm hearing you say is that although those might be worth considering, it's also probably much more valuable to turn your attention inwards and say, okay, what what is something that I can have control over no matter what they might do. If they, end up in a rebound, or if they like block me or something like that, I can always control my thoughts and, to a certain degree, my emotions and everything else that goes after that chain there.
Yeah, it's exactly what I'm saying. Is so basically, when people come to us, their thoughts, their feelings, and their behaviors are not in alignment with who they truly are, because they're acting outside of themselves because of an emotional response of fear or anxiety, not knowing what's happening next, and the want and desire for a certain outcome. And 2 + 2 can equal 4, and you can do all the things, but if you don't know why you're doing the things and you don't have the intent behind doing the things, it doesn't really become sustainable. So when people come to me, a lot of what I hear is, I'm doing all the things right, I'm doing all the things right. And you can be right till the cows come home, but if it doesn't work, what then?
Yeah, yeah. By the way, for anyone out there watching this, if you like this video, please help us out with our YouTube channel by hitting that thumbs up button, by subscribing to the channel, and by hitting the bell icon, and by jumping through whatever hoops YouTube is going to make you do to make our channel awesome. And also just please drop a comment down below as well too. If you like this type of video where I, sit down with someone like Chantel and we have a conversation, or if you have any, questions or feedback that you might want to share with Chantel as well too, just go ahead and drop a comment, or just tell us what you had for breakfast if you like the shredded mini wheats or whatever. Again, all comments and interaction help us out with the YouTube algorithm. But anyway, what were we talking about? I can't remember. I have to interject these things at the most non sequitur moments to kind of get people while they're still hooked on us. But anyway,
We're talking about the things. So like I said, sometimes there's the things to do. So you can tell
yeah,
people all day long to turn off their brain and follow the formula. But if you're not a chemist and you're just putting a whole bunch of stuff together and you don't understand the why you shouldn't put ammonia and bleach together, then you're going to get chlorine gas and you're going to pass out. Same thing in a relationship, right? If you don't know why you need to have acceptance, you don't know why you need release, and you don't know how that emotionally plays out for you and the benefits of going through this process, then it doesn't matter the letter you send. So I'll give you an example. So I'm not going to give any, identifying data, but I had a client recently in a coaching call read me a letter that they wanted to send to their partner. And it was a great letter if you're already best friends with them, because what happened is you lay down a bunch of questions you're trying to ask them. They come from a curiosity stand. So how are you? What are you doing? How's your family? And there's like pictures of that person in the letter to remind that person of who they are. Well, they know who you are. And when you ask someone a lot of questions, what you're doing is you're laying the burden of an outcome on them. You haven't really engaged your curiosity. And so a lot of times what happens with clients is they want to do something, they want to do the thing, but they don't understand the why behind it. And through coaching calls, he on his own came up with a much better way of contact that engaged her curiosity, fed into something that she would like, got rid of the heaviness of the obligation. And he did that on his own. Like, I didn't tell him how to do it, but because we created a way of being where he thought into the interaction, he was able then to go, I know now what I could say that is going to get a much more effective outcome, and then get into acceptance with whatever that outcome is. So there's the thing to do, and then there's the why to do it.
I get it, because oftentimes people, may not have been in contact with their partner for weeks or months, and they just, want to know, hey, how are you? What's going on in your life? But as I think you may have touched on a moment ago, that can be a pretty big package to unpack, especially when the two of you aren't really in that sort of place of rapport, where it's just like, hey, tell me everything that's going on in your life right now. Like if someone just asked me, hey, how are you right now? I mean, I wouldn't know how to really respond to that. It's like, okay, how is my week going? How is everything going with these like personal things that are going on in my life? I haven't really announced this on YouTube, not much anyway, but my sister-in-law is having some cancer issues, so we're having to go back and forth between where we live and where she lives to support them and all that. So it's kind of crazy for us, but or I wouldn't know how to really answer that in all sorts of different ways. But if we can just take this big question of like, how are you, and instead just make it into a smaller question that can then open a door to a bigger question by something like, hey, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it depends on where someone is in terms of connection with their partner, but hey, what was the last thing that made you smile? Or what book are you reading right now? Or, something like that. We can then start to make the question easier for them to answer, easier for them to engage with, and then take it where it might go from there.
Well, it's like trying to like force feed someone a 7-course dinner when like they have no idea if they're even hungry, right? So you're basically dumping a huge heavy weight on them of obligation. So if I ask you today, how you doing? Well, you could answer it in a bunch of different ways. We're pretty close. And if, we're having a conversation, a phone call, you may open up to me how you're really doing. But if I'm in a grocery store, I'm going to say, fine, thank you. That's the polite way. And I'm sure when you have a rapport with someone or you want to rapport with someone, fine, thank you is not going to cut it. But that's what you're going to get because there's a space of civil politeness that you don't want to lay on someone the truth. We all wear a different mask for different situations in life, and those masks can be genuine, but they are definitely masks because once we get home and you're sitting with your dogs and you're petting the dogs, you're your true human self because the dog doesn't care how you are that day. It just wants cuddles, treats, love, and attention, right? And
Sure.
so that's your true self. Whoever you're being with your dog is your true self. Now, going to the grocery store, you wear a different mask. You wear, I'm polite in society. I'm gonna, put my groceries on the belt. I'm gonna put the bar on for the next person. I'm gonna make sure I move out the line, social distance if it's necessary. And you go into that polite society outfit where you're not telling the guy behind you, I was really sick yesterday and you don't want to know what happened to me. You're not going to do that. You're not going to do that. And I think people
Yeah,
forget
let's,
that.
instead of 6 feet, let's make that 12 feet.
I think I need an additional social distancing right here, right? So you're not going to do that, And then think about this. How many times have you been somewhere where this lovely little old lady comes up to you and all of a sudden you know her entire medical history? That obligation of how to respond to that is a little bit heavy. You're like, well, this is a lot for a Monday morning at 10 a.m. I'm not sure how to respond to this. And so sometimes I kind of use that metaphor when I'm talking to my clients, when I'm talking to my clients, because it's just like you haven't spoken in however many weeks, days, months, and sometimes years. So how are you? You're asking them for 2 years, 2 months, 2 weeks of information because it's not like you just saw them yesterday. So you're asking for a lot of information you don't realize when you ask a simple question, how are you? You're basically asking them to fill in the gaps of how are you since I last saw you? And that's
Yeah,
something to be mindful of. I think people forget that how are you means since I last saw you, which can be quite a lot of weight on someone.
yeah, totally. Especially since it's a very unfocused kind of question for sure. What else have you noticed just in all of these conversations with people as well too?
A lot of people don't realize that they have the power that they have. So, there's a lot of talk about, I am this anxiety type of relationship status, or and they put different labels on themselves. And the moment you put a label on yourself and just say, that's it, that's what I am, it becomes disempowering in a way. It's nice to know that you tend towards certain proclivities when in certain situations. So if you know that you're going to be in a stressful situation, you tend to hide, or you tend to act anxious, or you tend to be, someone who boasts, or, kind of projects. It's good to know those things, but it doesn't mean that's who you are. It just means that's what you do in a certain situation. And remember how I said before, if you control how you process stimuli, you control how you think, how you feel, how you behave. And once you thought challenge yourself and go, okay, why am I projecting? Why am I posturing? Why am I cowering? Why am I shy? Why am I boastful? Why am I doing these things? And almost all the answers are because I'm doing the exact opposite of who I think I am, because I don't like who I actually am. So what happens is, the pattern that I notice most is people are like, I'm in this situation, I don't like it, I don't know how to get out of it. And by getting them to do some thought challenges, they start to realize, oh, I'm an absolutely awesome person. And if I put myself outside of a relationship and I'm talking to a colleague at work, or I'm talking to a friend in a movie, I know exactly how to answer this question. But somehow, as soon as we, process these deeper emotions, we forget that the other person is still a human being, and they can be interacted with the same way you talk to your client, you talk to your colleague, you talk to your friend, you talk to your mom, and it's just one of those things. It's just kind of reminding people that there's no such thing as a power dynamic in a relationship, because like you said before, you're on the same team. So no one should be trying to overpower the other. You should never feel like you've lost your power, because nobody's holding any power over you. It's just you processing how to feel comfortable in a situation.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's a matter of choosing the game that you want to play as well too. I mean, sure, you could play the game of power if you want to, and you can be like, yeah, I've got more power than you. That means that according to someone that you're gonna come crawling back over broken shards of glass or something. But is it necessarily true? I don't necessarily think that power is going to equate to great relationship. I think that if you want a great relationship, you have to think about, okay, what game would I want to play that's going to sort of lead to that outcome automatically? Correct me if you have some sort of different opinion on this, but at least for me, it's about emotional connection. It's not about who has more power, who has less power, who's chasing, who's pursuing, who's running away, who has this attachment style or that attachment style or whatever. But it's really just about like, hey, we may be different people. We may have different experiences. We may be from different places, all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, we're emotionally very similar. Even though we may have been, from total. I mean, like you and I, we've never actually met in real life. And you live in Canada, and I live dangerously close to Canada, but not in Canada. Seriously, the clearest radio station we get is from Vancouver. But anyway, it, it's weird. I feel like I'm spying in on another country whenever I listen to the radio. But anyway, we've all felt kind of the same emotional things throughout our lives. You felt sad, you felt anxious, you felt fearful, you felt empowered, you felt hopeful, you felt everything in between. And sure, I probably felt that way at some point too. And we can connect on that. And so I think that is probably a much more powerful path to having a great relationship than trying to, I don't know, play hard to get, or use reverse psychology or something like that in order to gain power over somebody else, or whatever games people might play these days.
And that's true. I mean, at the end of the day, a game is like, you have a beginning and then there's a victor, right? And then the game is over. So, is that sustainable? So a lot of times when people ask me about attachment styles or the chase philosophy, or the different things, do I write the letter? Do I play hard to get? Do I make them jealous? Do I post a picture of me with another person that, I'm just like, well, even if those things work, how sustainable are they? Because now you've brought this person in and you've attached and emotionally manipulated them. Now what? Now what happens next? Now you've done the things, but you haven't had the reasonability behind it to understand why you're doing the things, other than getting the outcome that you want in the immediate aftermath. What happens? They go through the same cycle of getting together, falling in love, breaking up, because all they've learned is emotional manipulation instead of deepening the connection. Once you deepen the connection, well, then you understand another human being. You understand who they are. So there's a few things that we talk about in a lot of our philosophies. We talk about trust and how to build trust and how to be a trustful person. In order to have a trusting relationship, be a trustful person. Do the things that someone who's going to trust you would do. And then you'll notice that people start to trust you. So you have those trusted relationships. If you want love, be loving. Love is a verb. Love isn't just some arbitrary emotion. You didn't walk up on your wife, Clay, and go, "Oh, I love you." No, you did loving things. You saw things that she did that resonated with you. And so you thought, if I want to deepen this connection, I'm going to have to be a person that does loving things. So you enabled that personality by being loving and by doing loving things. And therefore you fell in love and you had love. And I think one of the great things that we teach is the be, do, have method, where, start being the type of person that's going to be the type of person that gets the things that you want. I always tell my clients, I said, okay, listen to this. Whether you like Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg, put that aside for a second. What kind of person did they have to be to have the things that they wanted? Because they didn't start out being millionaires, but they are now. What kind of mentality did they have to get to where they are? In the sense of they had to be fiscally responsible. They had to have drive. They had to say, no matter what happens and what downfalls come in my way, I'm going to move forward. The Steve Jobs of the world, no matter what outside of, what they did in the workforce, creating Apple is a major accomplishment, all these things that people do. And then you look at some of the negative things. So, you look at Elizabeth Holmes, she put on a personality, but was that really her? Well, we all know it wasn't. We've seen how many documentaries now. So she was trying to be a certain thing, but it wasn't embodied. It was just, I want an outcome. She wanted to have things. So let's look at those things in our lives. Like, what kind of person do you want to be? Be the thing, start doing the thing that that person should be to get where you want in life. And make sure that where you want in life is going to be emotionally impactful.
Yeah. I think that's a really important reminder. So many people try to do it the opposite way, which is to go with have, do, be, which I guess would be like, okay, if I have the right strategy, then I'll be able to do the things I need to do to get the relationship, and then I can finally be, loving or happy or whatever the case is. But instead, what you're saying is to reverse it the other way and to just start by being, happy or loving, and then just letting that inspire what you do next, and then letting that eventually lead to the outcomes that a loving person would have, which would probably be 9 times out of 10 being in a great loving relationship, right?
Exactly. And you're basically setting the path for yourself. Because if I said to myself, okay, so I'll take a little bit of personal history here. So I had a 5-year goal 5 years ago that I'm going to own a house. I'm going to get myself out of debt. I'm going to pick myself up, because I wasn't in necessarily a great place. I was actually in a pretty rotten place. Like, I was working shifts and it was great, but I was in a lot of debt. I had, past relationship debt, and I had a lot of things that were heavy on my mind. And I decided when I joined ships, and I was like, okay, so then guess 2017, I said to myself, you know what? I can't keep doing this. I'm just basically, it's great to live the day for the day and be present in the moment, but I'm not thinking that I'm still have to wake up tomorrow and still deal with the things I did today. So I made a goal for myself. And it's so funny because the goal I set for myself, I've accomplished, but I did not accomplish it the way I thought I would. It's so funny how that works out. So, I was engaged to be married, and like I had, this great relationship, and it didn't pan out. And 3 years into the relationship, so now my 5-year goal feels like it's been stunted, because now I was planning on moving to England and I was planning on having this new life, and that didn't work out for me. And and we started reconciling, we started talking, and then the more I talked to this person, I realized they're not aligned with me. They're not in my path. Maybe they're a great person, but they're not the person that I thought I was going to marry. And so our paths and the alignment that I thought I had with them was off. So I had to redirect myself, but I still met 5-year goals. Now I'm 3 years in, I'm like, whoa, where am I going to go now? But I had to be the same person that wanted those goals. So my 5-year plan had been to own a home, be debt free, have a few dogs, and like have this amazing happy life where I felt the burden of just the weight of the world that I've felt for a long time just kind of released from my shoulders. And I do have a home, and I do have some dogs, and I do have this amazing space. I'm living this amazing new life. It just didn't happen the way I thought. I had to go down a different trajectory, but I still had to be the same person. I still had to figure out who that person had to be and what she had to do to have that 5-year goal. And I'm happy to say that, as of, I think it was like June 1st, I was completely debt free. And as of August, I have a home. And it's so funny because it just did not work out anyway what I thought it was. And the great thing about that is sometimes whatever path you have in life, is going to change over time, and it may be something absolutely more magnificent than where you started out with. But if you consistently have that attitude of, I still have to be that person, then it won't matter. You won't have that. Like, I could have stumbled at that 3-year mark and go, oh, now I gotta start all over again with my 5-year plan. But I didn't. I had to, like, okay, I still have to be, I still have to do a certain thing. I still have to, accomplish these things. And I just worked even harder. And I accomplished my 5-year goal. And within the 5 years, just completely not the way I anticipated. And you were a big part of that, because you were part of my breakup story, and through the techniques and everything that you learned, I was speaking and we were talking and it was going great. And I just thought, not sure this is going the trajectory that I want. And I felt empowered enough and connected enough, and I turned my brain on to discover a new path for me. And I just feel like, whether you believe in God or whether you believe in the universe, I'm a faithful person, so I believe in God. So obviously prayer is a big part of who I am personally. And, I had to allow myself to trust in who I was, what I was being, what I was doing, to have the things I wanted. That's my personal story. And it's so empowering to know that where I got to was not on that map. It was not on that map, and if I had gone to somebody else who said, okay, do this thing, lay out this map, do this thing, and then it didn't work out and crumbled, then where am I going to be? Because it fell off the map, because I didn't install who I was being in that whole process. And that's a
Yeah.
great thing about being something, is that once you enable yourself to understand that, detours are fun. And detours can lead you to some beautiful new place you never even experienced. I never thought in a million years that I would be moving 2,000 kilometers to a home in a complete other province. Like, I've always wanted to. It was always kind of like an idea and a dream. And then I just decided, well, you know what? It's going to happen. And it did.
Great. I mean, that's a beautiful story, and I think that a lot of people watching this video can hopefully get a lot of like really nice nuggets of wisdom from all of that. I think we've talked a lot about some really helpful things for a lot of people, like really being detached from the path that you go on in order to get to your end goal. I think that's really valuable, and also the whole be, do, have thing. But just to wrap this up, like just in a high level sort of way, if someone was going through a breakup or something like that, what would you just generally recommend that they focus on or do?
So my first recommendation is, so I do this visualization. I think I did it with you once, actually. And it's a visualization of the future. So I take you through your 5 senses and I walk you through your house in the future. And it's the first thing I do with most of my new clients that I walk through, because I want to see how they see themselves. And it's very eye-opening, because everybody's unique and an individual, and it's kind of good to see whether they're going to be closed off, whether they're going to be practical, whether they're analytical, whether they're a dreamer, how articulate they are, how well they can visualize or not visualize. And it kind of already starts putting you on the path of recovery, in the sense of, most people, when they describe their vision, is the exact opposite of how they feel now, right? So, because who you see in the future is the person you feel you can metamorphose into, but you don't see yourself as that right now, very rarely. So if you're really, really sad, you'll see yourself happy in the future. If you're really, really confused, you'll see yourself with all the solutions in the future. If you're really unconfident, you see yourself as very confident in the future, because these are the goals you have for yourself, because you don't feel them now, but you're hoping the future will have them for you. If someone is, really stuck in that, then I see a lot more of who they are right now, because they don't see a way through it. So there's a lot of things. So I start from there, and then I go, okay, so this is the person that you want to be. So let's discuss the be, do, have, and then we go through a thought challenge. Can I do the thought challenge with you?
Sure, go ahead.
All right, so we are best friends. And what's your favorite activity? Is it a sports thing? Is it art? What's your favorite thing to do?
My favorite thing to do, let's see. Like
Together with somebody.
oh, together with someone. Okay. Um, yeah, like I think for me, my favorite thing to do with someone else is to just travel, just like go somewhere and just
Okay.
just be surrounded by like a new environment, but also at the same time kind of grow the relationship with that other person at the same time. It's a really enjoyable thing.
I love traveling, so that's great. Okay, so everybody who's listening and seeing this, you can kind of play along with me, okay? Imagine I'm saying this to you as well. And you can write in the comments below what you thought of this exercise. It's really interesting. Okay, so Clay, you and I were going to go to Italy and we're going to go see the Leaning Tower of Pisa. Okay.
Okay.
And we are best friends and we've got our lattes and we're like speaking really peripheral Italian words, you know, bueno, bueno, right? We're having a blast and we're laughing and we're smiling and we're carrying on. I hate you. How do you feel?
Sorry, you hit me or you hate me?
Correct. Hit.
Oh, I think I would be in shock and maybe a little bit confused, maybe a little bit in disbelief at first, and then I'd just say, "Hey, what was that just happened here?"
Now, would it be a negative emotion or a positive emotion?
Um, I think initially it would just be neutral, but then the more I maybe told myself something about it, I would probably start to feel negative about it.
So let's redo the story. You and I are best friends. We're in Italy. We have our gelato and our latte. We're going to go see the Tower of Pisa. Okay. And then we're there, we're taking photographs, and all of a sudden, this amazing star, like, you know, someone, I don't know, someone famous comes up and they say, Clay, oh my goodness, I've seen all your YouTube videos. I want you to come here and have a picture with me. And I go get him, Clay. So I hit you. I say, go get him, Clay. Now, how do you feel?
Well, that kind of hitting, like, a shove in the back or something, that would feel a little bit better, I think. Yeah, that would feel good. That would feel good.
So let me say something to you that might be an amazing realization. Both stories were exactly the same. In both stories, the lack of information I told you, you filled in the blanks, even with the second one. Because with the second one, you assumed I gave you a shove. I didn't tell you. First of all, I never told you where I struck you. I never told you how hard. I never told you my intent. But in both stories, you filled in information. In the first story, you probably filled in information like, she hit me, and you probably filled in information that I probably hit you hard, that I probably hit you in a spot that was uncomfortable, it probably hurt, and all these stories. So when we have a lack of information, we fill in the blanks unconsciously. We just do it. It's kind of an ancestral thing because, you know, if we lived out in the bush somewhere and we saw a shadow and we go, oh my goodness, that could be a lion, and it's just a shadow or a rock, nothing bad consequence happens. But if we see a shadow and think it's a rock and it's really a lion, we're going to get eaten. So we've learned over time, when there's negative space of information, to fill it in with survival. And that survival is usually negative. So both stories are the exact same story. But think about how much your feeling changed by how you process the data. Change how we process the data, we change the story. And that works in relationships too. Can you think of a time in your relationship where you processed data incorrectly because you filled in the blanks? Instead of allowing that situation to unfold the way it's going to unfold, you filled in the blanks. And we do it unconsciously. We do it all the time. So it's one of the first exercises I do. It's a thought challenge. Why did you think that way? How did you feel? I never told you A, B, and Z, but you filled them in.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I mean, I think that's huge for a lot of people, is to just start to notice those places where you fill in those gaps in information, and try to pull meaning out of something that may not necessarily be there. I mean, whether it's someone not contacting you as much as you might want them to, or whether it's somebody maybe saying something and you choose to take it personally, or whatever it might be. I think that's something that so many people can relate to.
And can be for the positive as well. And then we get disappointed when the positive outcome doesn't happen because you've done something positive. You've given someone a present, or you've given someone a letter, or you thought kindly of them, or did something that in your power you thought was amazing, but the other person filled in the blanks in a different way. It kind of goes both ways, right? So in the second story, I didn't tell you that I hit you softly or shoved you towards something. You assumed that. You assumed the benefit of the doubt. Slapped you across the head, said, yeah, go get him. I didn't tell you if I was sarcastic or not.
That's right.
You assumed. So it's, you inferred how my emotional response was to the story as well, right?
Yeah.
So it's all on how we interpret data, not necessarily the intent of the other person. And that's a great thought exercise to do, is like, okay, am I interpreting this with my own intent or theirs?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, so just those are kind of the two kind of things that I do with people when I first meet them. I do the house visualization and see kind of what their five senses tell me about their future selves. And then I do a thought challenge. And, you know, it really sets the motion for what we do here as a team, because we want to see that goal. We want to see that 5-year goal, right? And who that person needs to be to accomplish that 5-year goal. And we want to see how you fill in the blanks. How do you process information? Challenge your thoughts, challenge how you're thinking of your perception, because how you perceive a situation may not be the intent of it. And start doing those two processes: goals and challenging thoughts and perceptions.
Yeah, I can still smell the fresh baked pumpkin pie from the future visualization thing. That's
It's
one of my
amazing how that works, right?
that's one of my mortal weaknesses right there, pumpkin pie. Anyway,
You're in the right season for it.
I guess so. But thank you so much for being on this call. I don't want to hold you up all day. But once again, Chantel is our director of enrollment. And if you would like to, talk to her about potentially how we might be able to help you to reach your relationship goals, I'm going to go ahead and put a link down below that you can go ahead and click on and just fill out a short little survey. And then, at the other side of that is an opportunity to get to talk to Chantel and maybe see how we might be able to help you reach your goals, and maybe she'll potentially go over some of these exercises with you as well too. So who knows what that might be like for you.